Welcome, everyone. Oh, so many familiar names already. This is amazing. Hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Oh, some more faces popping up. Gosh, while you wait for us to start, maybe just put in the chat where you're from, where you're logging in from, where you're saying hello from, so that our speakers can know where you are. Oh, hello, Vancouver, Chicago, Denver, Delaware. Very nice. Okay, Drake, Oakland. See if you have any neighbors, anyone.
A
You
few
can
from Seattle.
meet new friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan is popular as well.
It is. Giovanna and Stefano, I'll take your lead as to when to start, so you let me know.
Yeah. Maybe we can start, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everyone to today's session. My name is Samuel Librant. I am based in Los Angeles, California. I am very excited to be here. I am an organization change and workplace strategy consultant, working mainly at the intersection of workplace design, so the spatial design, behavioral science, and technology. The return to work, of course, in the pandemic is very exciting for me because it involves a lot of space, and that's where I focus on most. But it's not about me, it's about today's session. However, before I introduce your speakers, I have some important logistical information. So before we get started, again, please stay muted unless you're talking to reduce background noise during the session. The questions will be answered at the end of the session. And unless Giovanna and Stefano, if you do want questions to be asked throughout, let the audience know. The slides and the handouts can be accessed within this session in the platform or in the Documents tab on the left sidebar menu in the platform. And you will have access to these documents for up to 1 week post the conference. And any technical difficulties, please send a note in the chat and an OD Network staff member will assist you. Okay, so those are the logistics. Hopefully those are clear for everyone. Now I'm very excited. I had a chat with Giovanna, I think it was, I'm not sure, 2 weeks ago about this session. I personally signed up for it because the topic really interested me. And so today I'd like you to please give a warm welcome to Giovanna D'Alessio and Stefano Petti. They're both partners in Asteris, which is an international organizational development firm. And they really have a passion for human potential as well as business performance. And those two led them to think, or rethink rather, about organizational design, literally upside down. And both Giovanna and Stefano today will accompany us in more of a collective reflection on the evolution of OD and really driven by the growing adoption of self-organization. They're also the authors of a book called Equity. So again, you're in for a treat, and hopefully we can generate curiosity and insights of where OD is moving to. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to you both.
So thank you, Samuel, and good morning, everyone. My name is Giovanna D'Alessio, as Samuel anticipated. I'm one of the partners in Asteris since 2001. We are headquartered in Italy with 100 executive coaches and facilitators in 25 countries. And we serve companies like Ferrero, Armani, Pirelli, Novartis, Heineken, just to name a few. I'm a former corporate executive and I have a passion for innovation and evolution. And as a good sailor, I like to keep my eyes on the horizon and anticipate what is coming next.
Thank you, Giovanna. And my name is Stefano. Petti, as Samuel introduced, and I'm the other partner at Asteris. So personally, after an international career in finance, I decided to devote my professional life to support people, teams, and organizations in becoming what they were meant to be. So that is the vision, that is the dream. And I share with Giovanna a lot, including the passion for innovation. In 2016, this passion prompted Giovanna and myself to ask very important questions. And one of them was, how could we have supported our customers even better, mainly leadership teams of multinational companies, to master the complexity and the acceleration of change and uncertainty they were experiencing?
So from these reflections, we engaged in a research project that led us to observe structure and organizational mindset as enabling or disabling conditions for the results that companies want to achieve. And as Stefano and I started to question the traditional company and how it is designed and organized, we realized that we are at the verge of a revolution. And to be successful in navigating this revolution, we need a new mindset and new tools. So today, we would like to engage you in a reflection about how this revolution will impact the OD field, but also ourselves as practitioners.
Thank you, Giovanna. So there will be some content that we want to share with you. But before we do that, talking about engagement, I kindly ask you to, and let me share my screen here. I kindly ask you to grab a phone or a tablet or whatever is connected with internet and with a browser. And please go to this web address. It's www.menti.com. You will be prompted to input a code, and the code is the one you see up at the top of the page, 7357684. And you will be asked a few questions, basically to rate how much you agree or disagree with reference to each one of these statements. So please go online and answer these questions, just to get a sense of where you are with reference to this topic. So we have somebody that broke the ice, one person. Getting good sense of, interesting. So most of the people that are answering are expecting a lot of innovation in the OD field in the next 5 years, which is really good to hear. We wouldn't give that for granted, by the way. What's also interesting is to see that a lot of you are connected with the idea that self-organization is growing, is on the rise, but also the belief that company can function and thrive without hierarchy, which is very interesting. And by the way, one of the topics that we will cover today. So let's wait a few more seconds to see if we can get the last people to vote. Okay. And it's not surprising that the lower score maybe is on the last dimension, because yes, there is more and more about different models of self-organization, but there is also a little bit of confusion. So our hope is really to provide some input and insights into this topic. Okay, so thank you very much. Let me stop sharing here. We will keep this picture in mind as we talk about the different topics today. And let's take a step back, though, and look at the context. So this is a research by Deloitte that in 2016 showed how relevant the topic of organizational design had become for companies. And the data you see here is based on a sample of 7,000 plus business and HR leaders in over 130 countries. And what we found particularly interesting about this research and the results is that although until a few years back, the theme of organizational design was not necessarily on the radar screen of companies, more recently, things started to look very different. And the Deloitte study really shows us that organizational design, at least in 2016, jumped to the top of the list of HR and organizational priorities. And the same research is also mentioning another very interesting point, that there was a growing trend in addressing these aspects of organizational design with the move from hierarchy and hierarchical structures to structures that were more based on networks of teams. So then COVID hits, and although we don't have current data, our experience with our clients is that COVID has been further accelerating this trend. So what we're witnessing more and more in organization is that they are willing to pilot programs with specific teams or divisions, or even within the whole organization, with the objective to create self-organizing entities, and where more people are really held more accountable for the results they need to bring, but also, and this is one of the other hot topics, for their own development and growth. So there is more accountability in that space too. And as far as we are concerned, we have direct experience on this with Equacy, which Samuel was mentioning. And Equacy is the organizational operating system that Giovanna and I designed a few years back, and that has been to date successfully implemented in startups, small but also medium companies, as well as in teams of large organizations like, for example, teams in Nespresso, the coffee maker, which is, as you probably know, part of the Nestlé group, which is a huge conglomerate. Now, very recently, we also had a conversation with a representative of a company that is called Meta Finance. I'm not saying Meta Finance because it's a German company, so I guess that the right pronunciation is Meta Finance, which is part of the Allianz Group, the insurance company. And they actually implemented self-organization in the whole company, which has more than 800 employees at the moment. And interestingly, they are mapping the results they are getting after they transformed the organization, and they are getting positive results across a whole spectrum of dimensions, including the bottom line. And the same is happening, for example, in some division of General Electric. And we are mentioning these two companies just because normally when we go to conferences or we read articles on self-management, we always get the same list of companies with Burzok or Zappos, and we wanted to bring on the table some new names. Our perspective, however, is that in order to fully reap the benefits of self-organization, you really need to be willing to challenge the hierarchical paradigm. And we develop over time a very strong position on this. After researching why so many organizations struggle to deal with their challenges and create the type of environment they want to create. So for us, it took a couple of years of heavy desk research, an international survey to people with different seniority and backgrounds, working in medium and large organizations. And we also interviewed a number of CEOs in Italy and also internationally. And at the end, we were able to say that even if companies tend to believe that their challenges are somewhat unique, the reality is that very often organizations tend to have exactly the same organizational and cultural challenges, regardless of their industry, size, and geography. So that was very important insight that we got thanks to our research. And not only that, we also discovered that one of the important reasons why so many companies fail to implement the desired shifts is that they hardly challenge the way they are designed and the hierarchical operating system. So that is something that is very rarely challenged. And there are a lot of studies that demonstrate that hierarchy actually reinforces the very same dynamics that companies tries to get rid of. And linked to that, we can also say that change initiatives tend to fail largely because organizations adopt only those principles that fit the hierarchical paradigm. So these are three insights that we got in the past few years, and that we hope are also, let's say, creating some interesting reflections for you. But let's see with Giovanna what this means in more detail.
Yeah, undoubtedly, the pyramid structure with a long or short chain of command generate several organizational paradoxes. So expectations and hopes that conflict with the obvious results of the underlying operating system. So let's look at some of the more common paradoxes that I'm sure you have a profession as well. So expectation of trust when systems are based on control. So almost all the systems in place in the average organization, like reporting, assessments, rules, performance management, appraisals, etc., have been put in place for the purpose of controlling employees. The role of the manager also has been created for the same purpose, controlling employees. So the basic assumption underlying those forms of control is that employees cannot be trusted. It should be closely monitored. And even if not openly stated, this is the message that people get. So how can trust be created in an environment based on this trust by design? Another one is the expectation of collaboration when the reward system is individual. So this is a classic. Any management team we have ever spoken to desires to see more collaboration within their teams. A lot of effort and money goes into team building activities, alcohol fueled Friday evenings out, and so on. But unless the focus of the reward system shifts from the individual to the group, employee will focus on the incentives that bring them personal rewards. And I would say, moreover, the very idea of advancing one's career in a vertical structure of the organization pushes people into competition and not collaboration. Another paradox is the expectation of agility without burning bureaucracy down. So CEOs invest a lot of money in agility programs, hoping to simplify how people work and to speed up company processes. But because they don't fully trust people, they keep the entire control structure in place. So agility can't be achieved without getting rid of many of the policies, authorization levels, complicated processes, and ultimately, managers. So you got what I mean, I guess. So I imagine that you all experience some of those paradoxes, companies wanting, wishing for, I don't know, for example, engagement, but then without changing their structure. So when we decided to venture into the creation of a new organizational design that exceeds the limit of the hierarchical organizational model, one of the key steps was to examine if managers, leaders, and employees were ready to truly embrace a revolution, and if they desire a shift in power from the leaders and supervisors towards individuals and teams as a key to achieving it. We carried out a quantitative survey with Research Now on a validated sample of 800 people working in large organizations in the United States and Europe. And the picture that the survey revealed was that employees at all levels have a strong expectation on transparency. So 64% of the sample expect most of all information to be widely available in real time, with the exception of what is restricted by law. Again, another 51% of respondents imagine an organization in which decisions are decentralized and made at a team level. 59% again expect the successful organization of the future to adopt dynamic systems and lean processes to keep the organization agile and without bureaucracy. And half the sample want to see a company made up of a network of collaborating team, with almost a quarter of them, of the sample, wanting a network of coordinated and self-organizing teams operating through shared principles without supervisors or bosses. So this is just a small selection of the results of our quantitative research, which also touched on other topics, such as the measurement of results, strategies, objectives, and work environment, and many others. And after considering all the alternative organizational models available, such as sociocracy, holacracy, we decided to challenge the very idea of subordination and created a new organizational model that revolutionizes all the key aspects relating to the organizational structure, culture, systems, and people. And all of these in order to accelerate the creation of the working environment of the future and a workplace where people really express their full potential. We named this operating model equacy from the Latin equum, meaning equal, fair. And we published a book, as Samuel mentioned, describing the model. And then we started to implement this design in our organization and in others. And regardless of the type of teal design, I mean, equacy, holacracy, sociocracy, run the hay, and others, all of these models are based on the idea of networks of self-organizing teams that require shifts that challenge the thinking on organizational design and thus on OD. So let's look at some key shifts. Well, a self-organizing team is a team where team members define their objectives, their strategies, and what roles they need. They have full decision-making autonomy. Decision-making, distributed authority means that every person is enabled to take any decision pertaining to their role, and that makes reacting to opportunities and problems quick and effective without waiting for the chain of command. Well, we believe that partnership is the key quality for equal relationships when we move out of the superior subordinate paradigm. Well, radical simplicity. Equacy keeps the processes as simple as possible to maintain high agility. Then from silos to collaboration, which is made possible because equacy removes the boundaries between functions and departments. From information audit and transparency, also because transparency boosts accountability, because everyone has a sense of how they and all others are contributing to the advancement of the organization. And each member can make the best decision based on fully available information. Well, the strategy cycle, Boston Consulting confirms that moving the focus from the annual strategic plan to a policy of sizing ongoing strategic opportunities while coordinating across the company and adjusting as needed may be a much more effective way to look at strategy. And well, from performance review to peer feedback loops. So we know that the focus on performance appraisal is past behavior and is generally very ineffective. Ongoing feedback loops, on the contrary, provides the right context to celebrate success and address improvement areas right when the behavior happens. So we spoke a lot. We are moving now to giving you the floor. But before moving back to Stefano, I would like to hear if anyone has a question or a comment on what we have shared so far. And just unmute yourself, and I would like to hear a couple of you if possible.
Hey, Giovanna, I'd like to share something.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for sharing this. I'm excited to learn more about your approach. I have been using Sociocracy 3.0 a great deal in my work. And I know you recently did an interview, I think, with those folks. One thing that struck me about this slide was my knowledge of polarities. So I don't know if you're familiar with polarity thinking. If not, in short, it just gives you a sense of kind of two poles and how they're interrelated. And that if you emphasize one pole to the detriment of another, you'll get a suboptimal outcome. And so ideally, you're getting the benefits of both. And so one of the common patterns in polarities is when an organization is trying to go from one way of operating, say silos, to another, say collaboration, as humans, we tend to go too far to the extreme. because we reject wholly everything that came before as kind of anathema to what we are trying to achieve. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you say the from to the to, is there anything in the from column that you find value in retaining as you move towards a new model of operating? Just as an example, from my perspective, leadership and partnership, I feel as though there is a role for leadership and for people to play maybe not formal leadership roles in a more self-organizing operation, but one in which people are naturally inclined to take a leadership role given a circumstance because they have particular capability or knowledge or whatnot. And so there could be a tendency in going from a hierarchical model to a more self-organizing model to want to go to extreme egalitarianism, and not recognizing that people are bringing different capabilities to the situation. And so would love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, thank you for the question. For us, from tools, of course, is where we start to where we want to arrive. You know, what is the path? I mean, I don't see it as really as polarities. But anyway, in our research, we have seen that hierarchy brings, you know, hierarchy as a system brings with it some specific predictable dynamics. So if we keep what is on the left, we keep the same dynamics that we are trying to fight. And this is one of the reasons why in the organizations, generally 70% of the change programs do not reach their full potential, because organizations tend to keep the structure and the systems in place while trying to change little things here and there. But you know, if you don't change, in our opinion, of course, if you don't change structure and processes, you will not get any different result. So in particular for the leadership, it's a long debate because, of course, well, in one, you know, leadership has a lot of different interpretation. The word says that leadership requires followers. So in this sense, we think that everyone should possess leadership potential and leadership abilities. So much so that for us, leadership in the context of equity means personal mastery. So it's personal leadership, not leadership of others necessarily. Because when you work in a team, if everyone has a strong personal leadership, then it can create much more powerfully and cooperate much more powerfully. So I don't know if this helps or answer your question.
I have another,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yes,
Is it
please.
possible to ask another question?
Yes,
one of the things that I struggle with these organizations, right, within organizations, is how to handle, okay, how am I trying to say what I say, right? It's a paradigm shift in terms of like how we think about things, how we work about things, right? And I think there's an argument that you can create that within the organization that you're doing, but like there's that also the argument that we are trying to bring our whole selves to work and trying to create places where everyone can bring their whole self to work, right? So if you work in an organization that has this sort of self-organizing structure, but then when you leave work, you're in a society that is not at all self-organizing, that also has built-in hierarchies within the society itself, right? So it's kind of like creating this duality where you have to kind of code switch when you go into your organization and be able to self-organize, or when you leave your organization, you're in a society where if you do that, you run into a lot of structural barriers in society. Like, so I guess my question is, I don't even know, but okay, be clear.
How do you reconcile these two
how do you reconcile that and the impact that plays, right? Because when Zappos tried to do this, there was arguments that part of the reason why it wasn't as successful as it could have been was, one, because they were changing cultures of people who were used to more hierarchy, but there was also some arguments that people's nature is to want to be in charge, that people's nature is to have a hierarchy within society and just how you interact in a societal structure. And so I guess that's where I get sort of challenged when I trying to implement this, is there's always that push, right?
We don't have this experience, and to be honest, I tend not to agree that in the real world there is hierarchy everywhere, because every one of us in our life had to make important decisions. We had to, to face challenges. We got married, we made, children, we changed our house, we moved to another city, but we never had the need to have a boss telling what to do and how to do it. So I think that the experience that we have in real world is of total self-responsibility. It's just when we come to the office of the traditional company that we become stupid. So we become stupid because we need somebody to tell us what to do. So it's a little bit provoking, but I don't think that we live in a hierarchy unless your father or the family where you be raised were very, very hierarchical, but this generally happens in Italy, not in the United States. Stefano, do you want to add something?
Two very quick things. One is I see a lot of people from US connected, so I'm sure that as OD professionals, you must be familiar also with the work of Barry Oshry. He spent all his life, he retired now, but he spent all his life studying organizational systems, and he published a lot of research around the notion that every time you are in a system where you have tops, middles, and bottoms, not just in terms of organigram, but also in terms of psychological positions, you are subject to certain conditions that create a lot of limitations. So that is the system that is creating forces that you cannot escape in a way. So we studied a lot that phenomenon, and we said, okay, if you cannot escape those forces, the only thing you can do is change the system, because if you change the system, you change the conditions. If you change the conditions, you also operate in a different way within the system. So that is the perspective that we adopted. And the other element that I want to put on the table is about organizations as living systems, because in nature we have a lot of examples of systems where you don't need a boss. And the system self-organize and it works. So it's true that we have cultures and we have norms that are very much shaped around having to have a boss. But we are also here to challenge that kind of paradigm and see if there are alternatives that can serve us better. So I see a lot of hands raised, Giovanna, and what I'm wondering is, we don't have a huge amount of time today. So shall we stick to our agenda, or shall we just keep it as an open conversation? What do you think?
Shall we ask our group, the audience? So the idea is for us to send you into breakout rooms for 10 minutes to discuss one specific question for each room, and then come back and share. But if you wish to continue with if we have time at the end, we will have more questions. But if you want to turn to only questions, we are fine as well. So may I ask the group to, what do we need to do? To raise the hands or to lower the hands? Stefano, what do you prefer?
Well, yeah, I've seen people that raised hands saying with the thumbs up when you propose to go to the breakout room. So maybe we can go there and the agenda.
Okay, so I leave it to you, Stefano.
Okay, thank you, Giovanna. So without doubt, the increasing adoption of self-organization is really posing and will pose in the future new challenges to organizations and OD professionals. And this will be a huge shift also in terms of organizational models, how we look at leadership and processes in organizations. But now, again, we had a little bit of interaction, but we still have bombarded you with a lot of notions and concepts. So let's go to the breakout rooms. So the idea here is really to have you work. We don't have a lot of time, but you can maybe get some reflections going around a few questions that we have identified. You will be asked to join one of the breakout rooms. And Giovanna, you don't know this, but because we have a lot of people in the room, more than what we expected, instead of having 4 breakouts, we will have 8 breakouts, and we will have 2 groups working on each question.
Okay.
Now, if you can show the names, please.
Sure.
You have one group that is called Jupiter, and we will have one breakout which is called Jupiter 1 and one which is called Jupiter 2. But you will still work on the same question. And the question is, what is the impact of self-organization on the field of OD for you? The second question, which is going to be worked by the 2 Venus subgroups, is what does the OD field need more or less of in the future with the hierarchy-free organizations? The third question, which is going to be addressed by the 2 Saturn groups, is what new mindsets shall DoD practitioners develop to fully embrace self-organization? And the last 2 groups under the name of Uranus will work on this question, which is what skills, knowledge, and competencies will DoD practitioners require to support the shifts from hierarchy to self-organization? Now, again, 2 groups working on each question for 10 minutes. Not a lot of time, but if you can get 1 or 2 insights or key notions, we will be able to then share in the plenary room the outcome of your conversations. Now, please take a picture with your phone of the screen so that you can have the questions in front of you. We will not be able to share them in the breakout rooms. And do remember, please, to only work on the questions that you've been assigned. Okay? So 10 minutes, and we will gather back in 10 minutes in the plenary room. Enjoy working with each other. Okay.
Hello and welcome back. We are waiting for a few others, but we can start.
That felt so short, didn't it?
2 minutes, I'm sorry.
We could go forever and ever and ever.
And now I would like to hear from as many people as possible. And so I would like to invite you to share, a few of you, the most relevant insight that came up in your conversations, and share it briefly so that we give the possibility to many people to share. Who starts?
Well, I'd say that in our group, the most resonant insight was that Faith has actually experienced applying holacracy to a government organization in Washington, which is mind-blowing to me. And the fact that that's even been tried on American soil is, back when, way back in the olden days, when we were trying to import socio-technical systems into the US, there was a big conference in the US. And in Europe, it was called Industrial Democracy. At the US conference, there was an agreement that you couldn't call it industrial democracy in America, or people would think that's communism. So they came up with the term quality of work life as a way to kind of sneak it in. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you, Gervais.
So I guess, I can speak up for Jupiter 1.
Yeah.
I think we centered on 2 issues. It was very short. The first one is if you were coming into a truly self-organizing organization, how you contract would would be likely to fundamentally change, you know, as an OD person, right? Today we contract usually with a leader or a manager, even if we implicitly build a social contract with whatever team we're working with. But that would shift more to, we would be contracting with teams somehow. Hard to envision exactly how that would be. And the second thing was the notion that since it would be all about helping managers that transition, you know, let go, or more senior people or people who are used to exercising control, helping them let go of that, helping frontline people really grasp their freedom and empowerment, would kind of bring out the best in what OD is good at. So those were the two
Thank you, Susan.
things
Fantastic.
that we.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I can share. We were part of Venus. What does the OD field need more of or less of in the future with a hierarchy-free organizations? And we came up with a bunch of different things. I'll just highlight a few, and then Jaritha can jump in if I've missed anything. But we started off talking about the need for mindset shift and how the OD field could really support mindset shift. We talked about less diagnostic approach and more of a dialogic approach might be needed. More partnerships and how to create those meaningful partnerships, and then building more problem solving capacity, because if it's hierarchy free, there's got to be some sort of capacity built there, and OD field could hopefully support that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
I'll just jump in on the whole issue of mindset. And I think the 3 or 4 of us agreed that it takes a social constructionist mindset to move in this new direction, and with a tip to Jervis' dialogic mindset. And that absolutely, I think, is where we're going. I'm a devotee. And how do we work with the hierarchical structure in particular, you know, when you've got an engineering or healthcare industry, which is really intransigent in terms of certainty? How do you move them to curiosity, and how do you break through that? Because more than likely the workforce is eager for that generativity and to step into that, but it's being blocked by the fear at that senior level for it's going to cost too much, or it's not going to work, or whatever. How do you get beyond that fear?
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the questions that we received very often when we present our model, especially from coaches and consultants, because again, they fear that their clients fear to let go, especially those clients where their compliance policies are really strict and important. They fear to lose control of all these specific processes. Although, especially with equity doesn't mean that there is chaos, because I believe that there is much more control with equity than without, because with transparency, everybody knows everything about how the company is moving, where the company is moving, and what the people is doing. Anyway, maybe for a future conversation. Anybody else?
Our group talked about the skills, knowledge, and competencies required for OD practitioners. Mm-hmm. And a couple of things that we talked about was the importance of group dynamics, because in the networked environment, you're constantly moving in different configurations to really helping people with positive group dynamics. We talked about mapping power in the organization, not authority, but actual power. And what I thought was interesting about this conversation is using this to show that organizations may already be working in a more network way than we think they are, because the people with the real power from expertise or experience or influence are already shaping it. So that might help people even think that they could make the shift a little bit easier than they might think. Another was coming up with a more systems approach to organization design, not a top-down approach to organization design, which may be traditional, but really a more engaged grassroots systemic approach to organization design, and dynamic work design. How do we help in that area? So those were our 4 areas of competency for OD practitioners.
Yeah, and even the change program should be looked at in more systemic way and not top down as there have been, used to, with an iterative approach instead of, okay, let's build the perfect change. Instead of this, you can implement little modification, and then you test it, and then you continue. So the iteration is also something that will influence, change.
Mm-hmm.
Let me hear another one, and then we will be close to the closing.
I think that we didn't talk too much about our question as much as maybe we wanted to, because it's such a fascinating topic. And I think you guys could do a 3-hour session on this and we would all be engaged for that long. But really thinking about the knowledge, skills, and competencies also led me into what we're willing to do as OD practitioners. And I think having the skills and the ability to elevate deeply hidden assumptions around how we live and work together. And so I think, one of the people in my group, I think it's Veronica, brought up about, a lot of this kind of work is happening in social justice organizations, that this conversation is about empowerment. This conversation is about, how we organize in new ways to bring more voices with more power spread across. And I think one of the things, and we've seen it here in this room today, is we have to be willing to confront our own hidden assumptions about things like leadership. Like, we need to have a conversation. I personally believe we need to have a conversation about why we talk about leadership so much, and why we have classes on leadership and modules on leadership and PhD programs on leadership. And I'm like, what about everybody else? And I think for me, that's the conversation that we need to be having, is why aren't we having those classes and those opportunities for everyone else in the organization? Why are we having a preference for this way of disseminating power across our lives? And I think even in this community, we're hard pressed to really ask that deep question and mean it. Can we have conversations that don't use the word leadership when we talk about organizations?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
So I think that's the skill that we need. Then that skill looks inward as well as outward. So
yeah. Thank you very much. This is a perfect closing comments to this session. I would like to give it back to Stefano for closing the hour. And I would like to have another hour.
Yeah, I know, Gervas, you had your hand raised, but we had to promise that we will close exactly on time. But as you will see, we will leave our contact details. So of course, you can reach out if you want to, let's say, keep the conversation going. So Giovanna, I don't know if you had a slide to share, but
yes. Sure.
We were aware that 1 hour is not a huge amount of time, and we are very thankful about your participation and all your questions and interactions. So we mentioned the research, Giovanna mentioned the research that we did. We repeated the same research in 2020 during COVID time. You can download for free the results of the survey, the research from the Equacy website. But we would like also to, as a gift, let's say, to you as participants to the OD event, we would like also to offer a free registration to what we call the Equacy Taster. There will be an international edition on June 30. Normally, the cost to attend is about $130. But for you as participants to the OD event, it would be free. If you're interested, that would be a great way to deepen a lot of the concepts that we touched on today, and also have you practice the difference and experience the difference between working in the two different settings. So with bosses and without bosses. So that is an opportunity for you, and you can, Giovanni is sharing the link in chat. So if you want to use that link, it will be a free registration. And of course, you can also have a look at the book, because we try to write it in a way that is very pragmatic and provide a lot of examples and tools. So if you're interested about Equacy, you can also have a look at the book, which is on Amazon. So we really hope the session was insightful, and please do get in touch if you want to get more, know more. And thank you so much for being with us today. It was really a pleasure to have so many people together. Thank you.
Before we go, announcement. Well, thanks everyone for staying along, and thanks very much, Giovanna and Stefano, for such insightful session. Also, thanks everyone for attending and for participating. There's a session evaluation once you go back to the platform. Please rate this session, and also there'll be a conference survey post-conference. Up next, a very exciting session, and that is the DEI plenary panel, and I believe it is at 2:40 p.m. until 3:45 Eastern Daytime. So I'm not sure where you guys are, but that's where the time's up. So thank you very much once again, and see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.